Good morning. It's a delight to see you on a Saturday morning here in Washington, D.C. area. It's a beautiful day. I hope it's a beautiful day where you are. We have folks from several parts of the country, and including Minnesota and elsewhere. I bet it's a little cooler there, Peter, but we're delighted to have you wherever you come from to join us in this very, very exciting short course with the Reformed Institute. Renewing Church and Theology for Public Life, Reformed Voices is a very timely and important topic as we work towards reshaping, rehealing, revisioning, rebuilding our society and our churches. So again, welcome. I'd like us to begin with prayer. I invite you to join me. Holy God, teach us to heal fully. Teach us to speak the truth boldly. Teach us to love fully. Convict us, convert us, consecrate us in the name of your Son. Amen. We're delighted to begin this three-part series with remarkable leaders and visionaries in the church. Today, I want to welcome Reverend John Molina Moore to be with us. Now, John Molina Moore is a breath of vitality and fresh air to the entire presbytery here at National Capital Presbytery in the Washington, D.C. region. John was a musician and athlete. I didn't know that when he was at Sterling College, where he graduated with his bachelor's. He was a stellar preacher and student, and from what I've read about him, quite a scholar at Princeton Theological Seminary when he received his Master's of Divinity. And knowing his leadership gifts and sense of vocation, he went on and received a certificate in advanced executive leadership for ministers from Howard University. John is gifted in ministry and having served pastorates in Red Clay Creek Presbyterian Church and Calvary Presbyterian Church near Wilmington, and he served as state supply pastor at Northminster, an historic church here in the Washington, D.C. region. And he has served other parishes as well. The feedback I get about John is that just new life, new energy, new vision, really a fine intellect and very, very gifted leader. And we do welcome him today. Begin this adventure, and John Molina Moore, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Larry, and good folks at the Reformed Institute for that warm intro. Larry, the people who knew me in any of my education, I don't think scholarly or studious would be an adjective they used to describe me, but I will take it. I will take it for an introduction for a day like this. I should have asked you this, Larry, before we started. Is everyone here Presbyterian? I know it's Reformed Institute. That's a big umbrella, but is it safe to say that we're at least 92% Presbyterian on the call today? Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, I got to know from someone. Okay, so that might be the 3% who's in the know. Thank you, Donna, for offering that up. Hopefully, I'm going to get some chances today for you all to interact with what we're talking about before we go to breakout rooms. Don't feel any pressure to do that. They're going to be short one-word answers, and just offer those up in the chat. But if you don't, I'm promised. If you're laying back at a distance from your couch or listening through some headphones while you're doing the dishes, don't feel like you are missing out on engaging with chat feature. I am going to preface our time today, especially with what I say, with my deep love for the church and what we have done for the past 2,000 years to be able to where we are today, statements of, we're standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us, that the church as a whole body, as Christ's living body here on earth, has done amazing work and has so much work that we will be able to do in the years ahead. So what the things that I am going to talk with you about today, please do not hear them as throwing the baby out with the bathwater or axing tradition and history that you might have fallen in love with. I believe there is space in what the church will become for the overwhelming majority of things that we have always done. There is space in what the church will be to bring all of those things with us for tools for ministry going forward as we continue to engage new people in the world. So in my role as General Presbyter here for National Capital Presbytery, we have 103 congregations. That number is growing of number of congregations that we have, but surprise, surprise, the number of members in those congregations are, for the past, before I was even born, for the past couple of decades, has been slowly tipping down. And on paper, it looks as if we are headed for a crash, right? Forget a great decline, a crash. As our population grows in the country and around the world, our membership in terms of Presbyterian churches, or forget it, mainline churches, is headed that way. This is probably not surprising numbers to any of you all. So there's a lot of conversations, right, about what is it that we do, and people get into panic mode. It's all going to end in 20 years if this keeps on. But what would it look like for all of us to be on the same page on where we see ourselves going to actually grow the church? For those of you who have been around with me in National Capital Presbytery, I talk a lot about the G word, growth. It's something that I personally take as a focus for this job. I like to, when we're having staff meetings or different CWIM committee meetings, I always say we need to put the lens on of so that our churches can grow. And I do not mean just numerically. I don't mean butts and seats, which means dollars and plates. I mean growing our impact, our reach of the gospel of Jesus Christ to our community, the people who are currently involved in our congregations and the people we hope will eventually become involved in our congregations. How is it that we are growing the ministry of our church? So if starting today, if the line so that our churches can grow, and like I said, growth is very broad of a definition here, if that cannot be added to whatever program or policy or tweak to the book of order, whatever it is that we're bringing forward, if it can't be used to help our churches grow, we don't have time for it, right? That is not something we can focus on right now. We need to help all of our churches get into a position where they can grow, broaden their impact into their community, into their context. Right now, because of the pandemic, we are realizing how wide that net of community can be of people who join in from Minnesota and California on this call today. That because of COVID, we've been able to really see how far it is we can reach to impact, right? To grow, to share in ministry of our churches. I'm going to start off today with a little bit of a history lesson that I assume most of you know very well. You're probably familiar with Netflix, right? I'm assuming most of you have a Netflix account, or either, like my parents, access to my Netflix account so that you can watch Netflix. Flashback to the year 2003, 2004, Netflix is becoming something big. A lot of people are engaged. Do you remember what Netflix model was 20 years ago? You signed up online, you picked a long list of movies in your queue, and they would mail you 3 DVDs in a little paper envelope. They would mail you 3 DVDs. Remember, I don't have a DVD player in my house anymore. Remember DVDs? They would mail you 3 DVDs. You would get to hold on to those DVDs as long as you wanted, but you could not get number 4 on your queue until one of those DVDs was returned in the mail. They would scan and process it in their warehouse, and they would send you the next DVD on the list. So you could go through your whole queue as long as you were quick to return them. But the big thing was there was no late fees, right? You could hold on to these as long as you wanted. You just couldn't get the next one in line because you had to return the first one. Netflix main competition in the year 2003 was who? An organization, a company that most of you probably don't even remember because you haven't been to one in forever. Blockbuster Video, right? Remember how big of a deal Blockbuster Video was? I have vivid memories of driving to a Blockbuster, each kid getting the okay to go and pick out a VHS tape that they wanted to rent, one we've probably already seen 1,000 times anyway, take it home from Blockbuster and have it for the 3.5 days that you got to have the video. But you had to return it back, right? You had to come back to return your video because if not, you had late fees. And that was Blockbuster's big difference between Netflix and Blockbuster were late fees. There is now a very infamous vote at the board of Blockbuster Video in the year 2004. They came together and they saw that Netflix was taking off. They even had an opportunity a couple years prior to that to buy Netflix for $50 million. They turned it down. They then had this now famous board meeting to decide what they were going to do about late fees. And Blockbuster had a vote and they said, we are not going to get rid of late fees. Why not? Well, because it was $800 million of revenue a year for Blockbuster to collect late fees. So Blockbuster, then we know the story, right? Where they last 8 more years after that. And their 900 stores around the world seemed like they closed overnight. And Netflix has now grown from this returning DVDs by mail to being able to access movies anytime you want on a phone, on a TV, on a tablet, download them to watch them on the bus or on a plane. Netflix said, our priority is getting entertainment into the hands of our customers, right? That's what they said that their mission was. We want to make sure people have access to the stuff they want to watch. Blockbuster, they probably thought that's probably somewhere on a mission statement for them from when they first started back in 1985 that we want to get movies into the hands of people's homes to be able to watch them on their TVs. But in 2004, they mixed up what their actual purpose was. It looks as if their purpose was to collect late fees. That was what was holding them afloat, was being able to collect late fees and not getting entertainment into the hands of the people of their customers, people who wanted to engage with them in business. Now, I know some of you have difficulty comparing business world to church world, but there are a lot of things that translate between the both of those. One of them is knowing who it is we are supposed to be engaging with. In the business world, it's very clear. Who is it that are your customers? In the church world, I hope none of us think of members, of people that we minister to, of those we engage with mission as our customers. This is not a transaction world that we live in, but we need to be very clear who it is that we are trying to reach. In the business world, it's pretty narrow, right? If you want to have a successful business, you have to do a dance between everybody and a dance between a very fine group. You have to find that middle balance of who it is that you are going to attract to be your potential and future customer. In the church world, we're given, right? It's told to us who that audience is supposed to be. Everyone who touches every corner of the earth. All peoples of all nations, that great commission, right? To go out and reach everyone. That is our call. That is our customer base of who it is that we are supposed to reach into the world. So today, the focus for these next couple of weeks is understanding that church in the public sphere. And this one, we're going to talk about the work of the local congregation, right? That is what I care about the most. So that's what we're going to focus on today, the work of the local congregation for church renewal. Before we as the church, we as local congregations really begin to think about who it is that we are going to reach, we need to be very clear to come to the same page about what it is that we are even doing. What is the church? What is its purpose? What is its mission? Why are we set there in communities? What is our role as the church? I've been to a lot of churches over the past almost 2 years now in this job. And when I get to sit down and talk with leaders, open up with question and answers after sermons and adult study groups and Bible studies, it is still unclear to people who have been sitting in pews of our churches for decades. It is still unclear what the elevator pitch is. Why is it that we do this as the church? So I believe that before we begin to really engage the public, really engage the community that we now find ourselves in, we as the insiders, the people already in the church, need to be absolutely crystal clear what it is that we are doing. Right now in National Capital Presbytery, like I said, we have 103 congregations. And I don't think any of you, what about this? Let me look at this list. Anybody here is part of this. There's a small contingency in our presbytery, and this is talking to other people in my position of other presbyteries. This is true nationwide. There's a small group in each presbytery of churches who are absolutely uncertain about what the role that they are to play as the gathering of Christ's body as the church. Most of our churches have a pretty good mission statement. They do their best to live into that, to engage the people who were in their pews and to engage people who might eventually decide to join them in a life of ministry. But we have a handful of churches who are uncertain of what their role of the church, who say our job is just to be a small rural gathering, not focused on mission and ministry, not focused on proclamation of the word, not focused on engaging other people to join them in this ministry, but to remain a small collected gathering of people. But to do what? Unclear of what it is that we are supposed to do. So I hope that in this presbytery, we can set some goals to say, let us all come together and say what the purpose of the church is supposed to be. What is our goal? The Book of Order, I'm going to pull mine up right now, gives us some very good stuff. And I think if we held this litmus test up to many of our congregations, even ones that I have been part of and have led as a pastor, we would fall short pretty quickly. In the F section, F10304, the great ends of the church, there's just 5 sentences. I'm going to read them for you right now. The great ends of the church are the proclamation of the gospel for the salvation of humankind, the shelter, nurture, and spiritual fellowship of the children of God, the maintenance of divine worship, the preservation of the truth, the promotion of social righteousness, and the exhibition of the kingdom of heaven to the world. Short list, right? Can we all agree that, let's just go ahead and make that every church's mission statement, that this is what we are set out to do? But first, we need to do that hard internal work, examining ourselves to make sure that we are all on the same page. I get to speak with a lot of churches, and I talk to churches who are excited about some new ministry that they're going to dive themselves into, and they're kind of ready to trim some of the fat of what they have been doing to start this new piece. And rarely do I hear those very dedicated leaders in those congregations who feel that they have been called to do this work. Rarely do I hear them talking about why Jesus is pushing them to do this. We as the church, as the universal Catholic Church, the collection of saints, we are Jesus's body for the world. If we forget that, what stands us different than any other good-meaning, social club or organization who is trying to do good in the world? What sets us apart from the Boys and Girls Club or from the YMCA or from the Rotary Club? What sets us different if we are not saying we are doing this because Jesus has asked us, because Jesus has called us, because Jesus is showing us, is pushing us, is walking with us so that we can live out the gospel? That is what we as a church need to come back to as a reminder, just like Blockbuster. Your purpose was not to collect $900 million in late fees. Your purpose as the church is not to create good programs or to have younger families or to have a bigger education wing. Those are not the purposes of us, the church. Jesus's body gathered here together as a collection of people here to do his work in the world. Those other things can happen. But if we forget the main lens that we are looking through all this for is that we, like Netflix, are trying to get something into the hands of people, and that is the living Christ. That if we package that in a way that people can understand and digest and connect with, if we get that out there, our faith tells us that we will grow, that we will increase in numbers, but we have to be very clear with ourselves what it is that we are doing. I hope all of you got a chance. The book I sent out to recommend is actually my colleague and best friend in ministry. It's a book that's a couple of years old now, but not too many churches. And the hope of writing this was to get good discussion and good conversation into the hands of leaders in churches to start to think about new ideas for the same purpose, right? To help us grow the church, to help us focus our lens on what it is that, who it is that we are, what is it that we are called to do, and how then that will help us to grow the church. So many of our churches, there's a section here. If you don't read anything of this book, or if actually you want me to just send you a PDF copy of this chapter, please let me know. But the chapter 4 is written by a fellow Princeton scholar, Matt Bruce, and it is what we mean when we say church. That is a very helpful, it's 10 pages long chapter, a helpful starting point to understand the baggage that we're holding on to, that's holding us back, and what we're actually called to live in to be. So for many of us, the understanding of the church, for the people who are in the church and for the people in the community, I hope it's not a surprise to you, is a building, right? That is where it is that we gather. We cannot do any of this if we don't have this brick building with white columns and a white or red door that people is very clear in the community, that's got a steeple. They were all built between 1942 and 1973. They look the same. It's an identity marker for the community that says this place is set apart as something different, and the people who gather here have a very different purpose than the rest of the community. We tell that to ourselves, right? That's what it is that we use our building and our facilities for, and that's what they stand for. But I don't think that we insiders, that people sitting in the pews are clear about that, and our community is definitely not clear about that. So when Larry did my intro, he mentioned a church in Wilmington, Delaware called Calvary Presbyterian Church. Calvary Presbyterian Church is towards the very end of the south side of the city of Wilmington. It's right before you start to get into, the suburbs that were built in the 40s, right in the 40s and the 50s. A church that in its heyday had, 800 members. This is the story of many of our churches, and had a slew of bad decisions, of bad leadership, and dwindled them down to about 100 people. But people who were still in the community, right? Who actually walked to church on Sunday mornings. They didn't drive, small parking lot. People would walk to church on Sunday mornings. So I come in as a half-time co-pastor and still tied as a half-time associate pastor at a 1,000-member church further deeper into the suburbs of Wilmington. So I come in and I say, we are going to do this work that I just said, be very clear about who we are as the church, and then translate that in language and cultural context that our community is going to understand. First thing I did, this church has been there since 1944, I think was there. Yeah, 1944 was the year they started. There is a elementary school directly across the street that I think almost every member who was over the age of 65 in that church that still walked there, they went to that elementary school. That was the community hub where these two places, Calvary Presbyterian Church right on the corner and Richardson Park Elementary School across the street. So I say, all right, we have a perfect community that we can engage with to tie people to. So I go over to the school that you can see from the steps of the church. I sit in the office of the guidance counselor to talk about how we can just be better neighbors, right? To be in relationship with each other. This is not to try to get people to come to our church. We're not going to send you flyers about what Sunday morning looks like. We just want to be in a better relationship, better neighbors, get to know each other a little more. I'm sitting in her office, looking out her window. What do I see? Oh, the front of our church. I introduced myself. We had talked on email. She wasn't sure exactly which church I'm coming from. So we're sitting there talking. She's like, which church is yours? I'm like, the one across the street. She says, there's a church across the street. A lady who can see it from her office, who has to pass by it to get into the staff parking lot of the school, didn't know that directly across the street was a church. One of the most traditional church buildings that you could possibly ever think of. Looks, there's no confusing that building was a church building, but unsure that there was a church there. And if she can't even recognize the physical thing that many of us hold on to as our calling, as our identity marker, what hope is there that then she's going to know about the emotional, the connectional, the relational investment that might be happening in that church? So I hope that's not too much. That I'm not. I know I can talk fast. I'm sorry. I do my best. I have notes all around my laptop every day that says slow down, but I get excited, right? So sorry if I'm going quick. But part of the work, which I hope I get a little bit of time. Where's my clock here? I get a little bit of time to focus on today. Is the starting work for us to begin to separate ourselves from building space. That we, as the church, many of us still sitting in the church who are just as valuable members as anyone else to this body, we are still confused about our identity. And many of us think that our identity is this building. For those of you who have been around me a lot in this presbytery, you know that I talk a lot about property redevelopment. I do not think we have too many churches. I think we have too many church facilities and too many church buildings and too many education wings that were built for ministry of a certain day and time. But I do not think that we have too many congregations. We have too many church buildings, which are not churches. They are facilities to help us do ministry, but they are not the church. They are not the place where Jesus lives. They are not the place where the only place where we can hear the Holy Spirit. They are not the place where we tap into the Creator who made all of existence and each of us. They are places to help us do the work of the church. They are not the ends. The early church didn't have churches, right? They met in people's homes. Their communion feast was not a serious snack set apart on the top of a chancel. Their communion feast was a feast. It was a potluck of food brought to people's houses so they can engage with each other and be clear about what it is they were going to do. How were they going to reach more people to impact their lives, all for the sake of the gospel? So we in the greater Washington, D.C. area, as all of you probably know all too painfully well, we sit on very, very, very valuable real estate. I grew up in San Jose, California, which is even higher than what it is for Washington, D.C. My parents still live there in a house they need to hurry up and get rid of. We sit on very valuable property. The overwhelming majority of our churches are doing their best to put Band-Aids on their walls, Band-Aids on the facilities that were built of a certain day and time with ministry of that looked a certain way, that we hoped, right? That we hoped we would do this forever. We hope that we would still make Sunday morning education for children and for families and for adults an emphasis on us. Let us build a facility to help us to do that. It is now very clear that that is not the best way to connect with people in our community who want to engage in life of faith, but we then force our best leaders, our best time, our best resources to holding those facilities together at the expense of what those leaders could be doing to grow their churches, to broaden their impact and their reach for the sake of the gospel that is the unique flavor of their local congregation. So we in Washington, D.C. area have a unique opportunity to look at those facilities. We have developers who will gladly build houses and condos and apartments that are going to only add to the problem that we have here in this area of outpricing where people can afford to live. We as the church have this very unique opportunity to answer some of that problem, to focus in on how is it that we can impact the community? How can we ensure that people have safe places to live? And I'm not just talking about housing. That's an easy option for churches to think about doing with some of their property, but it's not always housing. It's senior daycare centers. It's actual schools. It's community programs. It's spaces that the community can come together for things that we know that they need. We're not chasing culture and context and just trying to find a way to fit ourselves in. We as a church have a very unique story. We have a very unique way of looking at the world that we know and believe can impact people. How is it that we then can give the community what they need, not what they want, what they need, and also being able to expose them and show them the love of God that we know through Jesus Christ. So I hope some of our churches, especially after this time of pandemic, get an opportunity to re-examine and to rethink their actual physical footprint. Is that helping or is that hindering your chance to expand your ministry, your chance for renewal into your community? We as the church are not buildings, we're not facilities, we're not education wings. We are people gathered together as Jesus's body to help share the story of peace and justice and reconciliation and redemptive love to everyone that we meet. It's great that we get to do that in facilities, right? It's great that we have space to do that, but let that not be in the way of what can happen. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying every church needs to tear down their facility and have some affordable housing apartment developer come and build a new building that just offers you some space in the bottom that looks exactly like the second, third, fourth, and fifth floor of apartment buildings. That's what I'm not saying. That might work for some contexts. We still need a physical space in the community that says to the community, this is a church. This is where the people gather to do the ministry that God has called them to do. But that is not their purpose and function, is that facility. That is just where they gather. This is something set apart from other places in our community that is clear with themselves and is clear to the rest of the community what their role, purpose, function is in the world. And that is to reach more people, all for the sake of the gospel, to be able to grow and expand our church and our ministry. COVID, this pandemic has for those of you who are Enneagram enthusiasts, I'm a number 7, which is the enthusiast, right? The forward thinking, the silver lining. So I see the pandemic as nothing but silver linings. We just got a phone call 25 minutes ago upstairs. My wife just texted me on. My son and I had to get COVID tests because he had a fever 2 days ago, and we're all good. So I wasn't worried before, but I'm feeling great now. But anyway, this pandemic, there's plenty of silver linings for us as the church going forward of what has been shown to us, what has been revealed to us through this pandemic that we didn't need. We didn't need these facilities for us to be the church. Of our 103 congregations, there were only 2. There were only 2 who never figured out how they were going to jump from all we know is gathering in the sanctuary on Sunday morning to finding a way that is going to work and speak for their community and context to engage in ministry while they are still at home. Only 2 congregations out of 103. didn't make that leap. I was assuming it was going to be a whole lot more. But what this pandemic showed us is that we already have all the tools inside of us to be the church, no matter what our facility looks like, no matter where we get to go, no matter what time of day it is, we are still able to come together to be the church without so many of the things that before this, many have said, we cannot if we didn't have these. These are going to be the markers of who we are. We had to let go of so many of those. And what happened? Many of us grew. Many of our budgets were higher than they were the years before. We have churches who have joined new members during a pandemic that haven't had new members in the last 4 or 5 years. This has shown us that we can still be the church. All we need is the gathering of us together and a commitment of what our mission and ministry is going to be going forward. And now we have people across state lines in different time zones and over different bodies of water around the world who want to be engaged in the life of one of our congregations because the opportunity has presented itself to do that. I hope that in these next couple of months, when we start to go back to normal or whatever that might look like, we don't lose any of that, that we don't forget all the things that we were able to figure out and to then translate the truth that we've always known, the truth that has been the same truth since the dawn of existence. We were able to translate that into a new context for people to engage with, right? We didn't try to tweak ourselves or to hold things back or that we had to find a way to make this work. We were able to take everything of what it meant to be the church and bring it onto a completely digital platform. It's not going to work forever, right? I would love to be able to hand someone a piece of bread during the Lord's Supper. I want to be able to actually hold water and pour it on somebody's head. Yes, we absolutely need to do those things. But we were able to take our core, not our tradition, not our history, our core of who we are, and find a way to make all of that translatable into the world we now find ourselves in. I'm going to close our time with you by sharing a story that I share with a lot of congregations when I go to visit. So if you've heard this one, sorry. I'm a huge hip hop connoisseur, right? I can recite to you more Tupac and Biggie and Jay-Z lyrics than I probably can scripture verses. So don't tell anybody from Princeton that's the reality I live in. But that is one of the main lenses that I look at through the world. So I still keep up to date on albums that are coming out. Even this morning, I'm listening to new stuff that came out on Friday that I didn't get a chance to listen to. I try to keep up to date on the music. Now, as you probably know, this music art form of hip hop is now decades old, 40, almost 50 years old. That's how old hip hop is. Been around for a long time, right? Still to this day, my very favorite album, and I do not recommend, if you're not a hip hop fan, don't go and look this up. This is a PhD seminar level album, but it's an album by a group called the Wu-Tang Clan out of Staten Island, New York City, called Enter the 36 Chambers. And it was this gathering of, at that point, teenagers kind of from all over New York who shared an affinity for Kung Fu flicks. So they would all travel up to Times Square. Back when Times Square was not what it is today, right? Some of you probably have been there, a member of pickpocketers and movie theaters that we shouldn't be having out in public anymore. Times Square is not a good place, but you can go there to watch Kung Fu movies. So these teenagers would get up there and watch these Kung Fu movies. And then they decided to form this group, this hip hop collection of different people who shared those characters that they saw in these Kung Fu movies, right? Who had a special style of martial arts. And that translated to the style they had when they were to write their lyrics and produce music. And this first album that came out, they wanted this mid-90s gritty street New York sound. So instead of synthesizers to make their music, they would actually drop rusty paint cans on the floor and drag chains across the ground to create the percussion sound. So one, it felt like this, gritty New York City feel, but also kind of honored these Kung Fu flicks. So it's an amazing album. I had it on tape years before I probably should have been listening to music like this, walking to school on repeat every day, listening to this album when I'm in middle school. we get rid of cassette tapes, and we move to CDs. So I have to rebuy this album on CD and play it on my Discman. And now I'm in high school and I'm listening to the same album. I know front and back every word that you could possibly imagine on it. I know it. Go to college, we no longer have CDs. This is how fast things are changing. We have MP3, so I have to go then and repurchase this album on an MP3 because I don't have a CD player to play it on anymore. So I have to put it in my iPod and my iTunes collection of a different version. So then I get to be an adult and have a real job, and they start to release all kind of, special editions. This is remastered. This is this. So of course, I'm a sucker and I buy all of those every time it comes out of some type of new edition. Now, it's something that I love, right? This is something that I hold on to very deeply. I can talk to you about why this song was put together this way, why this rapper takes on this type of diction when he delivers, because he's mirroring this style of this character from a Kung Fu movie. I can talk with you the best about this album. But what I'm not going to do is, if you need to sit down and hear this with me, what I'm not going to do is drive or fly back to San Jose, California, dig through my parents' attic from boxes of stuff that I might have had when I was a teenager and try to find you that original cassette tape and try to play for you that music, because it's probably held together with Scotch tape. It's been wound up with a pencil 50 different times because it all spooled out hundreds of times. I'm not going to try to play for you that one because that was the one I fell in love with, but I didn't fall in love with a cassette tape, right? I didn't fall in love with an old Walkman that I needed two AA batteries and headphones that had little orange pads on them. I'm not going to try to recreate for you the medium by which I was able to engage with that. I'm going to go out and get you. I'm going to buy it again. I'm going to get the highest quality one I can get. I'm going to put it in these fancy new headphones that give me the best sound of music. I'm going to give you the very best so you can engage with it in a way that is going to impact you, and you are going to best hear and best be able to sit with you. I'm not going to hold on to a medium that helped me get there. And that is our calling going forward, especially after this pandemic. Let us not go back and revert to the mediums that many of us were very comfortable with in the church world. When we now have engaged, even in this presbytery, thousands of new people, because we have given them a new way to engage with the core of who we are. Right? A new way to engage with the actual album from the artist, not the medium, not the one that we fell in love with. So let us remember going forward, as we start to engage the public, as we engage new people, all for the sake of helping our churches grow and reach their impact for the sake of the gospel. Let us not be confused that we are sharing mediums. We are sharing the core. We are sharing the gospel. We are sharing words that have been told to us thousands of years now. We are sharing that story in whatever way new people, the public, the community need to hear it. Don't be confused with tradition and history as what it is that we are sharing. We are sharing the core of who we are in whatever way, in whatever medium, whatever context, whatever language, whatever music style, whatever digital platform, whatever it is going to work to help new people engage and hear and believe the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right? We at some point had to print Bibles. We didn't do that for thousands of years. We at some point did that as a new way for people to engage with context. I still get a side eye here and there when I preach someplace before pandemic and open my tablets to read text and not actually from a Bible. Text is text, right? Scripture is scripture, no matter what medium we find it in. So my hope, closing for you all today, is that when we go forward from this, that we start to begin some clarity on multiple levels. Clarity within ourselves, the gathering that we know now as the body, the members that we still have, the community that we are still connected with. What is the clarity we can come together on before we then go out into the public to reach the people right around our church, the people in the communities and the developments and housing, whatever it be, near our church, and now the people around the world that we can connect with through platforms that we are using today. Clarity within ourselves, clarity on the purpose, what our core is, clarity on how it is we are going to then share that. What is the context? What is the medium that we are going to put that into to engage people, not to have butts in seats, not to have new dollars and plates, but to impact more lives for the sake of the gospel, to broaden and to grow the reach that Jesus has commanded all of us to do as our churches. And then it sounds simple. We just go out and do it, right? We find it what it is we are going to do. We have clarity within ourselves, and then we go out and do it. We share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the public, with those who are outside of our church's walls in ways that they are going to hear and fall in love with, for the excitement for them to say, yes, I want to participate in this very unique community of faith and their journey going forward to continue to live out that Great Commission. Friends, that was probably a lot. I lost my note page. I don't know how long ago. I hope that's enough fodder for a good discussion. Those of you who haven't got this book yet, there are discussion things afterwards. I encourage so many sessions and boards and whoever it might be to use something like this to just get the gears thinking about how it is that we are going to then translate this beautiful ancient story that does not need to be changed at all. How are we going to translate it into a different way for people to be able to hear what has always been true and the same since the very beginning? All right. That's my time. I'm assuming we're going to do some good Q&A. So I hope you got some good questions already brewing. I know you're going to get to break out to do some discussion. So I'm going to turn it back over to Larry on that one.
Thank you, John. A really fabulous challenge, and reminds me, and the Nate Phillips book reminds me, by the way, I do highly echo John's recommendation of the Phillips book. Reminds me of the work that has been done in finding new narratives for one's church as part of the core self-examination, looking at your old story, the golden age, finding silver threads that you can actually move forward in a new way. Diana Butler Bass has probably been one of the leaders in this narrative reframing of churches, and I was fortunate to do some of that with the Alban Institute when they were still in this area. So if your congregation is interested in doing narrative work around kind of retelling a story that does bring tradition forward, but finds a whole new vista for what is still vital to your ministry, is at the core, please let us know at the Reformed Institute. This is something we're exploring right now to see if we can offer churches more readily. So we had a really fabulous start. I want us to move quickly now to our small groups.
So how is it we as a congregation can explain to the outside what makes us different in the good works we are doing? That's the first question. Second question is, besides technology, besides Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, what else could we be doing to either get into people's homes, reach them where they are, something like that, either during the pandemic or in normal times?
Let me start. I already forgot the first one, so I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna do the second one. Invite people. Ask them to come to something. It is easier than ever now, right? To say you can. The entry point is not the risk of where do I park? Do I know I really should have been there at 10:15 instead of 10:30? They all said this thing after this hymn and it wasn't printed in the bulletin and I didn't know that. Are they going to ask me to stand up and say who I am? And are they going to sing me a special welcome song and put me on the spot? And I'm not comfortable with that. So all of those fears are now gone when you're saying to someone, hey, here's our worship service that you can engage with live, or you can check it out on 8:30 on Tuesday. Here's an opportunity for you to hear a pre-recording of our Bible study, or for you to engage with it live when it happens. The entry point is so much easier now, and it's also easier to invite somebody. So it's not a designated time at 10:30 for you to get dressed. You don't know what the context is going to be like when you get there. You can turn your camera off and join it. So the entry point is so easy now, which we then need to then translate to invite someone, because it's so much easier to invite somebody now to say, you live in Michigan, cool. Here's a link for you to join what it is that we're doing. So encouraging our churches to invite our stated clerk in the Presbytery, who's new stated clerk, Jen Moody. We've been tossing something around, which there's 1,000 other fires that are lit that this thing is constantly put on the back burner, about how do we create a kind of step-by-step manual for churches to fully exercise something already in our book of order called associate membership, right? That people who are members of, don't care what denomination or what church in a different part of the country, keep your local membership there. How can you be an associate member here? And we call it something different, a digital friend or whatever's going to work for you. Maybe you already have a tagline that you use, but it's encouraging that person to be involved in the life of that church, knowing that they're probably never going to be able to step foot in that place because they live in Michigan or they work Sunday mornings. But we are making a pathway for you to then make this relationship official in some type of capacity with this church, because you enjoy journeying on the road of faith together with this collection of people. Why should we stop that after we go back to normal and get to go back into our buildings? How do we maintain those relationships and foster them and grow them even when we're still back together? But our friends across the country who are now with us in ministry have a kind of a tactile, a real, even though it is digital, real connection, because it's named as something. And I think naming things are very important, because it then gives it that ownership that I'm now part of this community because I am a digital friend of National Presbyterian or whatever it might be. So yeah, that was number two. What was number one again?
Number one was in terms of mission, charity, other nonprofit works. How do we distinguish ourselves and explain how we are different from the myriad of others out there?
Back to what I've been saying from the first couple of questions, Jesus. That's the the safe Sunday school children's sermon answer, Jesus. How is it that we are then very clear with ourselves and with the people that we are engaging with what our calling to do this work is? Not discrediting anybody who wants to do good things for society because the goodness in their heart, which I still believe is Jesus speaking in them, they just don't know it yet. But we're very clear that we are doing this because we are the church. We are the body of Christ who is continuing the work of feeding, housing, clothing, visiting that Jesus did when he walked earth. We are now doing it now as we, Jesus's body made up now, are still walking there. So clarity, and this is not, beating people down with John 3:16 or carrying banners and writing on our t-shirts, but very clear in our interaction with them, which is all, those of you who know me, I use the word relational nonstop. What is the connection, the relationship that we are building with those people? And then are we using that as the connection point to be able to talk about the gospel in a way that fits, that they're going to hear and best digest and understand? But I think us being clear about Jesus. So quick story on that. When I went, I think this is all right. We were about to move to Washington, D.C. We went for a trip back home to California with my wife, and we went to go visit the art museum downtown. It's free to go to. and they were having a exhibition on meditation and like mindfulness. So maybe we were still in Delaware. Anyway, we went there, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I would, because some contemplation is something that I love, so I wanted to get more experience and get involved with it. Line wrapped around the building to get into this exhibit, to be able to just sit in a chair looking at a piece of art with someone kind of helping you explain what you're processing through. And I was sitting there like, this is our story. We should be doing this. We can dive into it 1,000 feet deeper than what's happening at an art museum if we put the lens on. You are now tapping into the divine in a very unique way as you sit and process through this song, this piece of art, this moment of silence, whatever it might be. There's people are hungry for that right now. We can give it to them with way more depth than what they're going to get. I don't know if you can see right now. We have one of these workout mirrors on our wall right here, and they have meditation classes, and I go to them like, the church should be killing doing these things, and we're turning it over to the Mirror and the Pelotons of the world to do stuff that is at the core of our faith. But I don't know the reason. I do not know the reason why we don't engage with that. I have tried it since I've gotten passion for it. I've only tried it at 2 churches, both here in DC, and had an amazing response of people inside the pews and people in the community who wanted to come engage with a contemplative way of coming together, of worshiping. That was not Sunday morning. That wasn't at 10:30. That wasn't from a pulpit. That wasn't sitting in pews. But the stuff that people are desperate to get on things like that, and at art museums or apps on your phone. I see the commercials all the time for mental health, meditation, and all that. Like that's us. That is us. We should be running with that and putting the gospel along with it. So sorry, that was soapbox for me. Sorry on that.
No, it's fine. We need to. What I'm going to invite Yvonne and I, what we'll do is we'll share the extra questions from our groups with John, and maybe he can email us a few thoughts later, and we'll share those all with you. But I want to devote the rest of the time to group number 3. Rob.
Well, I'm going to ask 2 questions that you've already answered, John. So I think this will help our timing issue. The first one is share some success stories of churches who have done exactly what you're talking about. And the second one comes from your mom. We had your mom and dad in our group. Yeah. We are the Trinitarian group number 3. And that question is, I think you've already partially answered it. How do we redefine membership? Because it is no longer who can walk into your church, take the 4 membership classes, and make a pledge. It's much broader. And this question, John, comes from your experience becoming a confirmed member in your church, asking that question when you were 13 years old, and your mom repeating that question for us. And how can that notion of membership reach out to the other who perhaps has been excluded in our congregations before? So those are your softball questions.
All right, let's go with the membership one first. I am not a fan of what our current understanding of membership is at a church. I am a firm believer in something official that happens with an individual, with the life of congregation, that says, I, at this particular time and space, want to journey alongside with this group gathering of people, and I'm going to do that. That is, to me, that is the core of church membership. And then in our unique flavor of Presbyterian, that opens you up to say, okay, that you're part of this, then you have equal right and part and responsibility to be a leader in this group. But we have run away with membership being the marker of successful churches. I think we should put membership on a higher plane than what we have now. Let's engage with as many people as we can. Let's chart and track our engagement, and then we're very clear on. We hope all of you become members. We're clear on what that means. And I don't want it to be you having to memorize this thing, or my friend had to know all 106 questions from the shorter catechism for an exam to show that they were worthy of something. That this isn't us grilling and examining you, but we want to then recognize what God is already doing in you, and that you're saying, for right now, for this time and space, I want to fully journey alongside with these people. And I think if we reframe membership like that, and if we're clear about it, I think other people are going to be clear too. So in all of, which is not many, it's 4, all of the churches that I have worked in, every time I've had a one-on-one conversation with someone who we have engaged with that, hey, maybe you'd be interested in membership. Every church, almost every one of those conversations are dispelling so many myths that they have been told, right? Well, I was baptized Methodist, don't care. Well, my husband's Catholic, don't care. Well, doesn't that mean that I'm going to have to like give to the church? We hope you do, and we're going to talk to you about that. But no, there's no mandate that says you now must give to the church or sign up for something. I have to then be part of a committee. We hope you do, but dispelling so many of those myths that are told about what membership is where we have an opportunity, is what I'm saying, to really reframe that, and hopefully that then dispels some of those myths out there. All right, and Rob, the first one was
Success.
Okay, so I'm gonna go quick on number 1. The one I think is the has the best success story in our presbytery, and that's Riverside Presbyterian Church out in Sterling, Virginia. The quick story is, I don't know, 30 years ago, someone gifted this plot of land over in, I think it might have been in Sterling, to say, this is a developing area, let's build a church there. Fortunately, the leaders who had started that church plant said, let's not shoehorn ourselves in of building a traditional church building. Let's think about something else. So through a battle with the presbytery, had to sell that property, to hold on that money, and then to purchase an office building. And the office building, I think I don't know if it's 2 floors or 3 floors. Anyway, the top floors are office space. There are nonprofits in there. There are dentists in there. There are for-profits in there. There are counselors in there. There are other churches who need office space in there. And the bottom floor is a coffee shop called Ridgetop Coffee that is fully owned by the church, and their church space, dedicated sanctuary, office space, Sunday school breakout stuff. But their pastors then hang out in the coffee shop. I know coffee shops are trendy, but this one actually really works really well. And their number 1 tool of evangelism isn't their FaceTime and relational building that they happen in the coffee shop. It's when people get their credit card statement and it says $3.40 for a latte from Riverside Presbyterian Church. So they call the church and say, what's happening here with my card? So they use that as an opportunity to say, did you come to Ridgetop Coffee? Oh, that was actually part of our ministry. And then people then, oh, thank you, come back, and have another chance to connect and engage beyond the amount of traffic they get every single day, because their space. And then Sunday morning, people come. There's free childcare because we have Sunday school going on. So if you just want to sit around and have coffee in the coffee shop, knock yourselves out. There's a program that your kids can go to while you just get a break. So I think that's one of our more successful churches, right, that have broken the mold of understanding of what and how their facility and their resources can be used for.
Thanks.
Sorry, we have run out of time. Thank you so much, John, and thanks to all of you. We had very good attendance today based upon our RSVPs, which were over 60. We have a lot of people with us today. Attrition has been smaller than some of our gatherings. So we welcome you back next week with Jimmy Hawkins. And obviously, we want to continue these kind of conversations with John Molina Moore, and we'll need to have you back and look forward to that.
And could I do a quick Presbytery plug? If your session
please,
or visioning team or whatever wants to do more of this, please call my desk or call Tara. Both of us love this. Is our favorite part of the job is to come help do some of this kind of visioning, future thinking work with our congregation. So we are ever ready to come join you in those discussions.
That's excellent. Thank you. We want to close with a prayer today. I just want to note Yvonne McKinney is sharing that these recordings will be available online. So if you missed something, we will at least have the plenary and then the Q&A section available at the Reformed Institute website links. Any other announcements, Yvonne, before I turn it over to Quinn for a closing prayer?
I would just ask everyone to just check the chat box. I put a couple of
Good.
things in there about the recordings and readings. So just check the chat box before you leave. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. The reading
Thanks
does
for
have a
coming.
lot of success stories in it, Nate Phillips' book. So to add to John's recommendation of Riverside. So I'm going to invite Quinn Fox, who is the president of the board of the Reformed Institute this year, to close us with prayer.
Thank you, Larry. Please join me in prayer. Gracious God, we are so grateful for this time that we've had this morning to think about what it means to be followers of Jesus. And it means different things for different congregations. It means something perhaps subtly different for each of us. But in the end, it means being reconciled to you and to one another and to the world that you created. And so we pray that we might know what it means to stay focused on Jesus and what Jesus is calling us to do and who Jesus is calling us to be as disciples, as the body of Christ in the place that you have placed us. Thank you for John, for his gifts, for his excitement about the work of your body, and for all that he has brought us this morning. And we pray that we might continue to reflect on all of the issues that we have discussed and to take them forward into the next couple of weeks and to expand on them. And so go with us now in our days and as we prepare to be with your people in worship tomorrow, most of us. We pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John.